Hello and welcome in to another episode of Offensively Accurate, your host, Atlas Thugged. And I gotta say, for one, I do apologize for the streams. Normally I don't stream this often, but I'm only doing so largely because my schedule is so screwed right now. That really this is the only way I can kind of keep consistent content out, especially while I'm dealing with my, my newborn daughter's schedule. But with that out of the way, one thing I wanted to say too, for anyone who watches this and hasn't seen it already, at least in my opinion, the best thing that I have ever created was a documentary I made about Project Esther. So if you've not seen that documentary, it does heavily involve a lot of the topics that I stream about, talk about pretty often. Project Esther being a national, initiative to combat anti-Semitism, all the ways that it affects Christian thought, just the general kind of process of it. So if you've not seen that, I definitely would encourage you to see that. I might actually start pushing that out to a couple other bigger guys that follow me on X. But with that out of the way, wanted to let you guys know too, probably by next week, I'll get closer to a better schedule with videos. I know people prefer the videos. The videos are a bit more higher quality than what a stream can kind of do. So with it, just to kind of give everybody a bit of an update where I am at with things, and obviously, smash the like button, hit the subscribe, all the fancy bells and whistles, definitely do that. It helps me out tremendously. What I wanted to do with this is largely kind of cover a bit of the fallout that we had from the Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz interview. Now, a lot of people aren't even considering it an interview. They thought it was rather spicy, if you will, or a lot of gotcha moments with Tucker Carlson. I wouldn't say it was a gotcha moment necessarily, as I think the entire thing was largely just rhetorical. Now, I do think that Tucker did get contentious in certain periods of that, but I do think largely that the whole purpose of the interview from Tucker's perspective was to ask questions, not in a way to elicit an answer, but I think largely the questions were to make a point, which is, again, the definition of what rhetorical is. And so with that, obviously, you have Laura Loomer and Mark Levin and all these other individuals just losing their mind, going insane. And you have everyone kind of pointing out the MAGA coalition splitting. You have Steve Bannon kind of having these awkward takes, but a lot of people, going at Tucker Carlson. And then I named the stream Tucker Qatarlson because you have Laura Loomer and a couple other individuals just going onto death spirals about, Tucker's involvement with Qatar and, being paid by it. You have conflicting information. I believe Data Republican came out and said that they went through the FARA files. They think Laura Loomer's largely just making stuff up or, looking for things that aren't actually there in the first place. But I do appreciate that, Sven. Thank you very much.
Sven Wessel says, I love what you are doing.
Thank you. I do appreciate that. And I'm going to try to, do a bit more of the proliferating things too, kind of like, with what you see on the screen here. I want to find a better voice though. I feel like that voice kind of sucks. So maybe I'll try to get a better one that sounds a bit cleaner, if you will. So where I'd like to start off with, actually, would be the very first clip that was actually released, right? Which was the population of Iran. But inside of that clip, you also had the we moment, right? Where Ted Cruz lets it known that, like, we are involved, which is kind of a little slip in there. But I'm going to go ahead and swing it over here, actually grab this clip, because I would like to show everyone the extremely articulate response to this slight moment from Nick Fuentes as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the clip that Tucker aired that blew up, right? 40 million views in like 2 days. And then we're going to see what Fuentes' response is, because I don't think anyone has been nearly as articulate in identifying just why that is such a insane thing for a senator to say in regards to their positioning of wanting to topple the Iranian government. So with that, we'll start with the clip so everybody gets an idea of what is, Nick is going to be responding to here. So we have it here on screen. And again, this is from Tucker Carlson. It's only about 1.5 minutes long. I'm going to go ahead and blow it up. Any issues with sound or anything, just let me know in chat. We'll go from there. Okay, but here it is.
How many people live in Iran, by the way?
I don't know the population.
At all?
No, I don't know the population.
You don't know the population of the country you seek to topple?
How many people live in Iran?
92 million.
Okay. Yeah,
How could you not know that?
I don't sit around memorizing population tables.
Well, it's kind of relevant because you're calling for the overthrow of the government.
Why is it relevant whether it's,
because,
it's 90 million or 80 million or 100 million? Why is that relevant?
Because if you don't know anything about the country...
I didn't say I don't know anything about
Okay, what's the ethnic mix of Iran?
they are Persians and
What percent?
predominantly Shia. Okay, this is cute.
It's not
okay.
even. You don't know anything about Iran. So
Okay,
actually,
I am not
country,
the Tucker Carlson
but
expert on Iran.
You're a
who
senator
says,
who's calling
okay,
for the
you're one who
overthrow of the
claims-
government.
You're the
and
one
you
who
don't know
claims
anything about the country.
No, you don't know anything about the country. You're the one who claims they're not trying to murder Donald Trump.
No,
You're the
I'm
one
not saying that.
who can't figure out
I'm
if it was
saying
a good
you don't
idea to kill
believe-
General Soleimani, and you said it was
don't
bad.
believe they're trying to murder Trump.
Yes, I do.
Because you're not calling for military strikes against them in retaliation. And if you really
we
believe
are
that,
carrying out military strikes today.
you said Israel was.
Right, with our help.
So that's a slip up there. He says we, but largely the big crux of that is in the first 30 seconds of this clip, or first 40 seconds, I should say, which is that, again, Ted doesn't even have a strong, comprehensive understanding of the nation that he is, screaming at the top of his lungs that we need to topple. Which, again, you would think, with reality, that if you have had for, 8, 9, 10 years, this has been something that you have been speaking to the sentiment of, you would think then, I would imagine, you would be somewhat on a level of an expert understanding, right, of like what's going on. And so, at least to the bare minimum, you would have an idea about the population. Now, for a bunch of reasons I could go into, but again, I think Fuentes is a bit more articulate with it, so I'll just go ahead and let him respond here. So I do have this, and this is actually going to be from, I believe, Nick's show last night. And there's another clip I want to go to from Nick's show, but largely because I think that this response cannot be understated in terms of just the weight and what many other, Con Inc. individuals, I think, failed to meet the bar at when they just kind of defaulted to saying Tucker was doing gotcha journalism. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this up here. I'm going to get this clip ready for us as well. And again, any issues with sound, always let me know. I'll try to adjust it best I can on my end. But go ahead and switch it over. But first, I'll go ahead and check a couple of these chats. Manny S says,
Manny's says, how many house cats are in Iran?
Right. And that's what many people are kind of pointing it at. Like it's some kind of like gotcha journalism. But the reality is if it's like, you're planning on striking a country that has a population of like 400 million people versus striking a country that has a population of 10 million people. Well, yeah, it matters quite a bit because for one, the level of response from a country that's like that level of size is going to be much more something to be concerned about than the response of a much smaller country than that, which Nick also gets into as well there, but let's go to Sven.
Sven Wessel says, I am a European, but last stream I heard you ask since when the US has this problem. I watched a doc on the Gilded Age of the US when it started. Ever since then it got worse and worse.
And if you want to look up something even more in that same era, right, the Gilded Age, if you look up the Spanish Golden Age, I believe that's what they consider it. So it started in 1492. You should also look up what other group of people was expelled in the same year that kicked off their Golden Age as well. Something to think about. But we'll go ahead and go to this Nick clip here. Got to pull it up on screen. Let me get that out of the way. And this is Nick's, again, response to the Ted Cruz moment that went viral.
And the first thing I'll say about Tucker pressing Ted Cruz on the population, I see a lot of people saying, and this was Ted Cruz's reply, they said, well, what does it matter what the population of Iran is? That was Ted Cruz's rebuttal. So Ted Cruz is advocating that the United States overthrow the regime in Iran and go to war. I mean, we're bombing Iran. Make no mistake about it. That is what they are pushing. They are pushing the United States dropping bombs on Iran. Iran will attack us. And then we may be put in the position of overthrowing their government, which will have massive ramifications. And I see defenders of Ted Cruz, including Ted Cruz himself, they're saying, well, why do we need to know what the population is? So what? Did Luke Skywalker need to know the population of the Death Star before they blew it up in Star Wars?
Which is kind of an insane take as well, right? Ted Cruz ended up posting this meme, right? I think it was Luke and somebody else talking about, what's this population of the Death Star? Which is an insane take because when you know the history of Star Wars, I mean, how many times does it show them doing the battle plans where they have an extreme elite level of understanding of like where the vents are and what's the very specific way they can actually hit it? Like they knew what the Death Star was. Anybody on the Rebels in the Star Wars movie could have told you how hard the mission was going to be. They had an idea of like how difficult it would be and like the pathways of the ships. And then you know, it's a failure of a comparison, right? Because Ted Cruz has literally zero idea about anything, right? I mean, I guess he understands the ethnic mix. I would give him that, right? Persian, largely 2/3 of them. But the population thing was a big one, right? Now, I think Tucker could have honestly went at him a bit harder and a bit cleaner. That could have got the point out across, but again, it's kind of covered in this layer. It's so easy to go, well, Tucker was trying to get a gotcha moment, which kind of takes it away, but I do think the point stands. But, you know,
And I will answer this ridiculous rebuttal for anybody that needs to hear it. Of course, the size of the population, and we're not talking about down to the single digits, the exact number of people that live there, but having a general idea of the amount of people and what kind of people they are and how diverse it is and what their religion is and what the border areas are like, what the surrounding countries are like. This is all about the complications. This is all the demographic information that is necessary to understand what the actual outcome of this conflict will be. Of course, it matters how big the population is. If you have a country like China with 1 billion people, overthrowing their government is a huge deal. Because a country with 1 billion people falling into chaos is a massive problem. You're talking about instability, which could cross over into other countries and destabilize borders. You're talking about a high casualty count of people that would die if supply chains are disrupted, if people can't get food or medicine. You're talking about a very difficult prospect of replacing the regime, earning the allegiance of the people, and maintaining some semblance of stability.
especially because, too, how many times do you get this where they're framing it as when they get the regime change, what they need is they want a popular uprising. Well, if you don't have an idea of the makeup and the belief systems and the kind of natural turnover of the population, well, you can't even begin to even speculate what then might be the next possible ideology that takes over, right? Because shouldn't that be something of concern? You'd want to know then if you're going to blast them out, but you want a popular uprising, but you don't know the ethnic mix of the total population, let alone the ideology makeup, how are you going to be able to even begin to speculate what then could be the next group that would fill that vacuum would be? And then how do you know you won't have another problem on your hand then? What if a more radical group takes over? Right? And so, like, again, and this is not to say like the current group that is in there is radical. I'm not of that belief either. But just to say, this is kind of astonishing. And I think even more so too, I mean, imagine being an Iranian, knowing this is the rhetoric of America, and you catch this interview and you go, they want to help Israel bomb us, and they don't even know what the fuck we are. I mean, at this point, it's like, again, it feels like the negotiations, for whatever reason, aren't in the best faith. And I guess I should have led with this too. I believe about an hour before I went live, Donald Trump has kind of spoken to a 2-week delay before making any kind of final decision. I think they're kind of opening it up to having a 2-week extension to have negotiations. But I believe that's the same kind of ask from us, which is they want them to not enrich their uranium, and then also, I think, entirely denuclearize themselves, which I think would be a step backwards, which would pull them out of the civilian nuclear program they're in. But again, what's on the table for Israel denuclearizing? Nothing. And so, like, what is Iran getting besides getting basically forced back to being on an unequal side in the Middle East, where only one country in the entire region has nuclear weapons? Again, I never thought we went into this with in good faith. But let me catch up on some chats here. We'll go back to the video.
Manny's says, I'm really glad to see this divide on the right. It's honestly refreshing.
It was bound to happen. If it wasn't going to happen over Israel and Iran, it was going to happen over Christianity. You saw this with like Calendar Gate. You saw this with, all the constant fighting between like Isabella De Luca and, again, on all of these very, modest and social conservative issues is where most of the fighting happens on the right. I think it was always going to come down to, the Christianity aspect there. Also, what's up, Marcus? Good to see you, brother.
Says, Sup, Atlas.
Always love seeing you in here, man.
Sven Wessel says, on that, Project Esther was a good video. But here in Europe we are a bit further, where I have already been invited by police. Watch out, boys.
Yeah, I do feel bad. You guys are a couple of steps ahead of us. It's rather unfortunate. I've again, I think the crazy case that I saw, right, was I believe it was the guy who taught his dog to do a Nazi salute or something like that. And, the way that they kind of handled that case, you've seen plenty of, videos coming out of guys being like, what the hell? Because I said this online. Yeah. And that's what I'm hoping that we stop, because, I wish you the best of luck, but I definitely do not want to become Europe.
Kyle Kestner says, the United States needs to stay out of this war.
I really want them to. I am pretty black-pilled on it. I'm kind of resigned to the fact that we are on some level going to be involved. I'm kind of just at the point where whether it's going to be, is it going to be boots on the ground or just airstrikes? Like, I don't know, but I'm kind of resigned to the fact that I think we will be involved, no matter what.
Foundational White Wakandan says, deplatformed, debanked, banned, put on no-fly lists, censored, and stereotyped as a Nazi. But Nick just keeps rolling along.
And this is a testament to, as well, I mean, just for the fact that I am even allowed to exist this long. I'm going to be honest with you guys, like, I really thought like I was going to get taken off the internet with the last couple of my videos, probably largely the videos that you guys even know that who I am for tuning in. And I do think it's a testament to the fact that it's beginning to get to the point where it's unstoppable. And, when you see videos like, or the screenshots, right, where live, I believe, day one of the strikes of this conflict kicking off, you have Nick with 50,000 live viewers, and then Charlie Kirk has 7. I mean, the metrics speak for themselves. It's beginning to get a little undeniable.
Kyle Kestner says, these Christian politicians don't even go to church. Trump was a born Protestant, but notably hasn't gone to church since he was a child.
One thing that I've not looked into, but I've seen plenty of people post towards it that kind of put me off a little bit, was there's apparently articles, I believe, from 2016. It's either 2016 or 2017, so people can fact check me on this, because I haven't looked into it since I saw the screenshots online a couple of days ago, that Donald Trump actually converted to Judaism because of Kushner. Now, I don't know how true that is, but that is an article that I saw. So I'm not saying that as a matter of fact, I'm just saying that I saw someone claim that. And again, I've not looked into it, but again, and he's a New York liberal more than he is anything else. And I never really had faith that Donald Trump would do anything, Christian related largely. But yes, of course, I'll always try to feature as much Nick as possible. I do think he is the most on point out of any individuals on this issue. And also, if you're unfamiliar too, definitely check out the Backlash as well. I also go there too. Occasionally, when Nick's not on, that's going to be people like Vincent James, David Riley, Rebecca, I forget what her name is. But they have a constant good, good crew on there. They recently had like Jake Shields and Owen Benjamin on there to discuss some things. I'm not the biggest fan of Owen Benjamin. I think he's funny sometimes he's cringe. But I do think it was a good show. But I'm going to go back to the video real quick. I'll come back to chats here in a second. But if you are in here, definitely make sure you smash the like button. That's the best thing that you can do that helps support me, probably even more so than subscribing, to be honest. But let's go.
There's a question of sectarianism. Does it break up into multiple pieces? If you have a very large country with a large population with diversity, these are all complicating factors. These are all confounding variables that are going to influence the outcome of the conflict and actually how the conflict plays out in real time. So I see people saying, well, what does it matter how many people are living there? It just goes to show they know nothing. They know nothing about conflict. They know nothing about grand strategy. They know nothing about international relations. Those are literally the first questions you need to ascertain. In particular, the relative population tables of one country versus another. It's a far bigger deal to topple Iran than Iraq because Iran has 3 times the population. And what else does that mean? If Iran has a much bigger population than Iraq, it means they have a bigger reserve to pull from for soldiers. Why does it matter what the ethnic mix is? Because that determines what kind of provisional government you're going to establish.
And he makes a great point there too, which again is like the refugee crisis. Like, we're in turn, we're going to add to the fact that there is this kind of mass migration happening from the third world because there's just so much BS going on. And, I do think it's wild that so many people are calling it a gotcha moment. I mean, not Steven Crowder, but who is his secondary producer? It's like Gerald something. Gerald had some just extremely kind of, just awful takes. And, and even with that too, you have like just some basic principles where I don't understand that, we as Americans, like, even if Donald Trump himself came and asked me like, hey, I need your guns. I need your guns for the betterment of the country. I mean, I'd tell you, man, you can get the hell out of here. And to think that we are some kind of moral authority, that Iran is going to respect our wishes to de-arm themselves, when from 2020 to 2024, we had a literal dead man, in office, right? We'll take the MAGA route, right? Which is, we don't even know who was in office for 4 years. It could have been some random, deep state, right? Neocons running the office. And we think that, a couple months removed from that we're going to then, come to the table and be the moral authority that determines negotiations at this level. I mean, like, come on, like you have to miss me with that. Like, one thing that's missed all the time is just how the international community views the U.S., right? Because this determines a large part of how you need to be entering into negotiations with other people. Constantly doing this kind of, cock swinging, I think ultimately puts us in these positions where we're more likely to go to war than we wouldn't have been otherwise. And again, we're not open up as much as we should be. But I'm going to go a little bit longer and I'll come back to chats, make about like a little bit past 4.5 minutes.
It also determines whether there'll be fallout in the neighboring countries like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Turkey, Iraq, particularly with the large Kurdish minority, large minority of Turkish people. All of these things are absolutely essential to even begin to understand what we're getting involved in Iran. Once you drop those bombs, you never take that back. And you set America down a course. We are entangled with this country. And it sets off a chain reaction, a domino effect across the entire region, just as it did before, just as it did in Iraq, in Syria, in Libya, in every one of these countries, the big ones and the small ones, the ones with the larger population and a smaller one. Every time it happens, there's these kinds of ramifications. And you need to understand those things. You will never be able to predict precisely how a war plays out or what the outcome will be. But before making that irreversible decision to drop those bombs and get entangled and trigger the chain reaction, you have to have the humility and the respect of history and of mankind to understand exactly what you're getting into.
Especially because we know, obviously, the forever wars are called that because largely it was one operation after another that led to another operation that led to having to figure out how we clean up this operation and going to, and some of these takes are just so, I can't even begin to explain to you how retarded some of these takes are, right? We're going to watch a clip after this actually of Laura Loomer and Tim Pool. Laura Loomer makes this claim of like, she's like, what, does striking another country constitute war now? And it's like, bro, in what scenarios like does that not constitute war? Right? Like, are we seriously at the point where we have like we expect as the United States that we can strike almost anybody in the entire world and they won't retaliate? I mean, I think that's just, again, I think that's a little bit of a blind faith. I think the expectation should be the moment that you do strike, there could be multiple other countries that may want to go to war with you based on that. And it's just insane, and I think this kind of just general lack of, being objective, and not mentioned in this video, but I think a running theme of obviously his that I agree with too, which is this whole thing of, starting in the middle of the story, right? Acting as if October 7th was the first day the Middle East even existed, and all of the kind of leaving out of, the history of the nuclear armaments and the race thereof. And I'm so glad Matt Gaetz is speaking to this. If anyone has seen any of these Matt Gaetz clips with One American News or OAN, Matt Gaetz is being very vocal about this, about how the best solution is to denuclearize the entire region. And my mind just immediately goes to like, well, no wonder he's not the AG because he would have got things done. And it's just super unfortunate. You kind of think of like what the level of blackmail that goes on that can kind of push these guys out, like, our guys, if you will. But who knows if Matt Gaetz is even our guy. But I'll catch up on some of these here.
Need Staff says, America first is inevitable. Nicholas J. Fuentes.
Yes, agreed. One way or another, it's bound to happen. And I think most people can see the writing on the wall. The one thing that I would caution against is the fair, where the winds blow individuals, right? The fair weather friends. And that's the one thing I get really concerned about the more that we kind of see that Nick is clearly going to start gaining some serious mainstream speed, along with others. There are some others that are doing good work out there, like Sam Hyde, that you need to be sure that you're cautioning yourself for when, Crowder all of a sudden comes out and is now seemingly adjacent to all of these ideas. Whereas, where were you at the last 10 years? Same thing goes for most of these other pundits. And that's one thing that I do concern about. And I think most people for good reason, right? You want to be concerned about the people who want to come in at the top and try to co-opt your movement. And that's one thing we got to make sure we kind of ward against, is that this doesn't get taken over, by bad actors who want to make sure they can control the ship and steer it in a direction that we didn't want it to go.
Jorik Malalik says, Christian forgot about Revelation 3:9.
Pretty sure that Bible verse still will. At least last time I tried tweeting it, I got my post limited. Like I had to delete it, or not delete it, but it was like, this post is detected hate or whatever it says.
Michael Koniowski says, long live the Republic.
For as long as we can keep it going, I guess it's not looking the brightest as of right now. But again, every empire I think is timed. I think in the back of my head, I think there's always a chance that America can crumble into something a lot worse than what it used to be. Not that I want that, but that the reality is that it's definitely more possible than it was 30 years ago.
Sven Wessel says, it's double-sided to where I am glad for your content, but with Esther going and in Europe them checking everything for the last 2 weeks, even your chats being screened, it's also a honeypot.
I had a couple really good friends and that are, pretty decently aligned with where I'm at, and they've distanced themselves from me. And I do have that fear myself. I do genuinely do fear, kind of having a little bit of a barrier, especially with like growing and like jumping in followers into, because I don't know, right? I don't know who's a Fed. I don't know who's trying to get information from me. So I really, I try to keep the circle small, and it just has to be that way, because you don't know who to trust. You don't know who's going to try leaking your information. You don't know who's trying to going to be, tapping you, bugging you, trying to see your patterns. And I'm probably already in a Palantir database. But I think for anyone who's trying to even be involved in any kind of Discord in the chats and, in Rumble chats, even on Nick's show, that's one thing you have to be concerned about and be fearful of. Is like, what level of, federal operation is going on, and like, what are they listening to? What are they really kind of, catching you? So not to say self-censor yourself, but just to be a cautionary tale that, there is always a possibility you get missing personed, and, no one's even going to hear about it.
House Leotardo says, even if Trump is a Christian, his spiritual leader is tossing the Bible on the ground, making a fool of herself.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just, again, women shouldn't be pastors in the first place. So I think that's all you really need to know about, what's going on with Trump and his relationship there with Christianity as well.
Need Staff says, your stream keeps cutting out every 20 seconds.
That's unfortunate. At least on my end, it looks like it's not dropped yet. Maybe because you're in Europe. Maybe there's a little bit of difference there. Possibly. Not sure.
Kyle Kestner says, it honestly breaks my heart. After converting and being baptized into the Orthodox Church, my next move was joining the army. Been working on it with my recruiter for a little bit. Didn't want to fight Iran. Hey,
well, you know what I will say? I do appreciate your sacrifice. My brother was in the military for a short stint. It didn't last for him either. But I definitely do appreciate your sacrifice. More than likely probably could have been in your same situation. I know ultimately I had a father who was very, 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 very red-pilled from a early age. I was strictly not allowed to go into the military because they themselves did not want me to die for Israel 20 years ago. So I take from that what you will.
Kyle Kestner says, my advice to you is sign anyway. Better to have boots with a soul than heartless maniacs killing children. Be the light in the dark, my friend.
I don't know about that one. You know, I do think it is probably better that Christian men be the ones that are the warriors than being some random psychopath. But either way, I think the outcome is marginally different.
Anti-Syop says, thank you, Atlas Thugged. I hope it's okay that I've been linking your videos on Truth Social. I absolutely love your videos. I tell everyone to sub to you.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'll have to get a Truth Social account. I'll have to get a Truth Social account so I can, I'll follow you over there. It's like the one social media platform I never made an account for, but thank you very much. I do appreciate that very much.
Tren Groiper says, what really happened with Gates? Blackmail? How did they force him out?
You know, that may be something I'll touch on, not in this stream. I'd have to go dig up all the old sources that I have. I wish I could even give you a solid place to even start looking. But as far as I can remember what the story is, it's something to be involved with, again, a foreign entanglement, which I believe involved not only Matt Gaetz, but Matt Gaetz' father, and I believe like a senator. It's a weird story, and it's like almost like 10, 15, 20 years old, and I'm not sure if it largely directly impacts Matt, but I do think it has a direct involvement with his dad. It's been such a long minute, but there is some kind of weird story, and again, it does, for whatever reason, relate to like Mossad and Israel. But just to give you an idea there, it's been a long time since I've looked at it, not since like last year, around what, like November, when they would have been looking at the cabinet picks early on. It's probably the last time I looked at that. And let's see what we got here.
House Leotardo says, Sissa has a backdoor to YouTube.
Yeah, I would imagine I probably already do have followers like that who are probably Fed adjacent, you know, at the bare minimum. Let's see this here.
A Jim says, I am pro-intervention. The world begs for liberty, but governments controlling each nation would have us believe otherwise. It's not nationalism to have nationals submit to their governments.
I am not pro-intervention. And the world does not beg for liberty. This is actually something that I think is, you know, Homath did really well. And in Homath, if you're not familiar, right, his big thing is he does a lot of like meta thinking on females. I do think a lot of it's good. Ultimately, I do think your soul would disappear the longer that you watch it, because you're going to start to hate women. But I think he has some good things to say. But he makes the point that, again, what would you rather have? Let's ask the crowd here. I'm going to make a poll on YouTube. I'm going to make a poll for everyone in here right now. We'll go back to the next video, I promise you. I'm going to make a poll right now, if I can remember how to do it. If I can remember how to do it. Let me try here. I'm trying to remember how to do the poll on YouTube. Give me a second. I think I actually have to be on my actual YouTube page, because this is what I would like to know from everybody who's in here. This is what I would like to know. I would like to know, would you rather have your daughter on OnlyFans or your daughter wearing a hijab? That's what I would like to know. Kill that. I'm going to put this poll in right now because I want to know. All right. Would you rather OF daughter or daughter in hijab? And I would just like to know what the crowd thinks here. That's what I would like to know. Because I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to be severely honest with you. I'd rather my daughter be in a hijab before she was ever on OnlyFans. Point blank. Like, I am, like, I think clearly if you were to pit those against each other, which one's closer to Christianity? Being a porn star or wearing maybe a bit over the top modest clothing? Right? That's kind of like where my thoughts are here. Yeah, I'd rather have the daughter on hijab. And I'll make sure I go check on it here. Where are we at in the poll? Okay, yeah, that's wild. Okay, so 94% right with how many votes are in. That's hilarious. Okay, we'll let that run for a little bit. I'll check on the results here in a second. But I want to go jump back to the Nick video here. Because let's go ahead and finish it off. He's got 2 more good minutes of W Nick content here. So let's go. Let me get this Warhawks chat off my screen.
And so for Ted Cruz not to understand the basics, he didn't even have a guess. Forget about he didn't know it was 92 million or 90 million. He didn't even have a guess. It might be forgivable if he said, oh, I don't know, 80 million. If he was off by 10 million, that would have been forgivable. He doesn't have the slightest clue about any of it. Forget about the population. If you don't know that number, he doesn't know anything about any of it. Can he name the population, the top exports? Can he name the terrain, the size of the military, the structure of the military, of the government? And by the way, this tells you something which might be fairly obvious, but it's worth pointing out. Not only are these people advocating for a war, which they do not understand, advocating for a war against a country and a regime, which they do not understand. Obviously, this is extremely irresponsible and reckless, and it means you can't trust them because they don't even know what they're talking about. But maybe what is obvious but needs to be pointed out is that they have no idea what they're talking about.
And I think that's kind of the response, as a whole. Not only does it come off, I think, to anyone who watched that Ted has no idea what the hell he's talking about, but imagine being the Iranian government, the Iranian people, the Iranian intelligence, and, these are the things that I would begin to bring in negotiations, right? Which is like, can you seriously, can someone prove to me that you guys have a reasonable understanding, like in any senator, that they know what they're advocating for, or because I would begin to ask questions there, and I would really hone in if I was Iranian and be like, we would really love to have good faith negotiations. We think you're biased, and here's why, but again, language barriers and all that, and again, are they going to be that smart to lay stuff down like that? Not really sure. But again, didn't know what they were doing. One of the next videos that we will go to actually is going to be Laura Loomer and Tim Pool. It's a lot shorter. They talk about the coalition splitting up. And really the one bit that got me that was crazy about this was the part about the bomb and the missile strike, which is yes, yes, if you strike a country with a missile strike, that's would that not constitute it? If that doesn't constitute an act of war, please explain it to me. Because my encyclopedia must be busted. Because that ain't making no sense to me. But we'll watch it here in a second. I do want to catch up on some chats here from you guys. And I do appreciate everybody being here. Thank you very much. And let's start here.
Nick C says, Qatarlson is so cringe. The MAGA crowd is floundering.
Yeah, the MAGA crowd. I do think it's funny that we have that acronym, but it's true. It's seriously true. And it's wild. Mark Levin, Laura Loomer, Konstantin Kaizen, Joel, what's his name? Joel Berry has been MIA for a little bit, but then you have Seth Dillon, right? The Babylon Bee making these retarded jokes. They're so overtly Zionist. It's so annoying. And obviously the rest of them that are there too. Alex Jones is being attacked, right? Alex Jones called things like treason, right? He thinks if we're going to war under the regime change, called it treason. He even put out a video earlier today, saying that the regime change that needs to happen is Netanyahu needs to post. So I think Alex Jones is getting back into a bit of his, pre-controlled op rhythm, which is a good thing to see. And people are forming these lists. They're everybody take a list of all the people who oppose Trump, right? If your undying loyalty to Trump is a matter of how American you are, Trump is synonymous with Christian conservatism in America, get the fuck out of here. And it's just so these people talk to you we're fucking stupid, and that's the part that pisses me off, right? Which is when Laura Loomer and Mark Levin and all these other, these neocons, for lack of better words, talk to you we're fucking stupid. And we can't read between the lines, or we can't see their behavior. You can't see the replies. The internet's for everyone to see. And when you consistently spit in my face and then lie and change your opinions and grift, dude, I can't take it, man. That shit pisses me off. Let's go.
A Jim says, intervention was America first in the beginning, although incompetent / inhumane. Then it benefited DC, neolib / neocon. I am not supporting that form of interventionism.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna check that poll here in a second. I'll come back to some of those. Let's see here.
House Leotardo says, Washington and Hamilton wouldn't even intervene on behalf of France after they helped us in the revolution. No foreign entanglements.
Agreed. None. Period. None. Let's find another one.
Bart says, the Dems and Ted Cruz are crazy and Tucker is our beacon of hope. Cool. Terrible TV show. Axe the bullcrap, it would probably take a revolution.
Yeah, I don't want to reach extreme levels of being black-pilled, but I do continually find myself saying I do not think we can vote our way out of this. Much like our founding fathers believed, and hence why they made the choices that they did, although voting was never on the table for them. I've seen your tweet, your Chad's King. You have 100
King
shares of
Solomon
Palantir
says,
too.
I have 100 shares of XRP.
Like, I mean, maybe it's smart. Maybe that is the smart thing to do, right? Is invest in Palantir, right? At least if they're going to control us all, you might as well make some money off of it in the end. Something like that.
Kyle Kestner says, doesn't Netanyahu have like a 30% approval rating?
I don't know what his exact percentage is on his approval rating, but I do know it is largely being vocalized that he has basically lost the entire Orthodox Jewish community, and that, being in warfare is the only way that he's basically, retaining power, much like Zelensky, where Zelensky is at. He has to keep the war ongoing because it's the whole reason why that, their voting in their election was suspended. I'm not sure what the process is in Israel. I don't really think they have like the same kind of like actual democratic makeup. But it has largely been reported again that he has lost many, many, many people's faith and support, which is part of the reason why I think he is, going to the lengths that he is, and being so insane and evil, I would say. But okay, let's go to the Laura Loomer video because I did promise that we would cover that, and I want to make sure I am watching out because my mother's supposed to be dropping my daughter off here soon, guys. So once that happens, I'll have to sign off. So here's Laura Loomer. Let's go ahead and pull this one up. Laura Loomer and Tim Pool. Tim Pool started doing these cool kind of sit downs. Well, I say cool. He's not cool whatsoever. Tim Pool started doing these sit downs with these different kind of bigger pundits, which I do think is pretty solid. It's one thing I would like to start doing actually. Like if I had a bit more like weight to swing around. And do some more interviews. I'm going to try to grab some guys who I know like aren't full-blown retards to bring on here, and see if we can have some decent conversations about stuff. Because I would also like to be able to disagree and not bring in people who wholeheartedly agree with everything I say. Let me go ahead and pull this down. So let's see here. We have this video. This is from Laura Loomer and Tim Pool, right? So she writes, we were witnessing hostile takeover of the Trump administration. But let's just go ahead and just listen to this. And if the missile strike one's not in this clip, it's in the next clip. They're both like a minute and a half long. We'll listen to both of them, but here it is.
The problem here is this is what happens when you have coalition building. And this is why it doesn't ever work. During the campaign, everybody was so gung-ho about, inviting people like Tulsi Gabbard and RFK into the party. And they said it was going to be great and that we needed to expand the tent. But the reality is, Tim, when you expand the tent, you have unrealistic expectations and you cater to people that have never really ideologically been aligned with the MAGA movement. And then those people come in and they try to hijack the MAGA movement for what they want it to be, as opposed to supporting the man and the vision that is MAGA and America first. And so we're witnessing a hostile takeover of the Trump administration, in my opinion, by individuals in the Democrat Party who are now trying to LARP as MAGA, right? A lot of these people that are some of the biggest critics online, they came out of nowhere.
Where was Laura Loomer when Susie Wiles and what's his name, Chris Salasavita, basically dominated the Trump campaign and was running it into the literal fucking ground until like the last 9 months when they re-brought in what's his face, I think his name Corey Miller, or Corey Lambowski or something like that, who was like in the 2016 campaign. Because like Trump was like looking like he was actually going to have to compete with Kamala, that it wasn't going to be the red wave that we ultimately did get before like the McDonald's moment, right? Because Trump literally started aura farming the last like 9 months of the campaign, which was good and it got him in. Looking back, I don't know if I would have made the same decision. I really don't think that I would have. But where was Laura Loomer when that happened? Where was Laura Loomer when, Project 2025 and I always forget his name, McAfee, are getting pushed out, excised, shoved into the corner. I have no idea what these guys are talking about. Christian conservatism, I want nothing to part with your theology over there. And now it's a hostile takeover because the podcast bros are speaking out. It's such a joke, man. It's like, again, Tim Pool, like Tim Cass IRL, is for absolute literal fucking retards who can't critically think. And I used to be a big fan of Tim Cass, and I would say he's got a good platform for when people are on that they're going to disagree. But man, they have become an absolute talking point machine. They just print it out, man. It's like a money printer. It's just sad what it's become. And maybe it's always been that way and I was blind to see it in the beginning. But here's the rest.
During the last campaign season, they have very astroturf social media followings. Some of these people may or may not be being paid by foreign governments like Qatar, like Iran. We have seen that there are lobbyists that are now being paid, right? One of these lobbyists is a group called Luminate Advisors that is being paid to orchestrate interviews with the Prime Minister of Qatar and people like Tucker Carlson. So
and this is what I was talking about at the very beginning, if you guys didn't catch it. She has been death spiraling about this, right? So the missile strike must be in the other clip. So she's literally death spiraling about this. And you can just go to Laura Loomer's page, right? We just follow it. Go here and look at it, right? It says proof Tucker Carlson lied about being a mouthpiece for Qatar. That's the pinned one, okay? She's probably playing all these. Where are we at? Tucker Carlson. Okay, not about Tucker Carlson. That's fair. Where are we at here? Tucker Carlson, right there. Hey, look at that. Qatar? Wow, that's crazy. Theo Von, Qatar? Wow, Theo Von's getting paid by Qatar, guys. Look at that crazy breaking news from Laura Loomer. Tucker Carlson, Theo Von, Tucker Carlson, Theo Von, Tucker Carlson. And these are all like 2 hours, 3 hours apart. Tucker Carlson, Tucker Carlson. So eventually, Data Republican, I think it's this one in particular, she responded. I'll move my camera back to normal spot. My bad, guys. So she's on this bend saying that Tucker Carlson did all this stuff, but doesn't producing any real amount of evidence. She's quoting the Data Republican, who does do a lot of really good kind of investigative reports on the kind of finances here. And you can kind of see these photos here. And the responses, one I would like to see, I think it was Owen Schroyer responded, but I could be wrong about that. And again, I'm probably not even grabbing the right one. She's been on this insane spiral. Here's another one, right? Quoting Data Republican, having this beef here because Data Republican is going, I'm looking at the same documents that Laura Loomer's looking at. And like, I have no idea what she's talking about. Like, I think it's the complete opposite of what she's saying, which is, again, who do you trust there, right? I've not looked at them myself, but just to show you that. And you can just go through, right? It's these constant, it's just her and fighting with Owen Schroyer and a few other people. I think even Owen Schroyer was like, okay, I'm done. Like, I tried, dude. Like, you're spiraling and you won't stop. So whatever. And so what? Maybe she does spiral out into, lose complete control. I really don't care. That's just like the warmongering and then the insanity and then talking to people like they're dumb. I can't stand it. Let's go back over here, guys. Let's run back up to a chat here.
Bart says, geez guys, we're so smart for realizing Laura Loomer and Mark Levin have indoctrined our parents. What about all the other corporate Zionist globalist government cultists?
Right. What about them? Right? Like, what are we doing? What are you doing? Right? Are you talking to people? Are you trying to make it known? Are you hiding behind like an anonymous profile? And that's one thing that I thought about early on, which is like, well, you don't never gain any ground being anonymous. Like, you have to take the risk. Like, my face is on everything I do. Like, I'm a real person. I'm not a bot. I'm an American citizen, born and raised. And I think that this country is ran by a group of people that have no fucking being or at all. It shouldn't even be involved. Got to put your face on stuff. Got to be vocal about it. Got to not care about the ridiculous kind of responses. You have to be vocalized. You have to push past it. And that's a big part of it too, is like the older, generations are indoctrinated to such a degree. It's depressing. Because I think some of those people aren't going to be able to be saved out of their brainwash.
Marcus Young says, I actually used to like Laura Loomer, but she has shown she isn't truly America first. She is only as America first, just as long America puts Israel first.
And right. And there's been bits where I do think Laura Loomer's had some solid reporting, like, you know, when she gets like the Loomered reports, in terms of just like the right versus left dialectic, I don't think outside of that she really ever has been a, you know, a bastion of America First ideology, like at all.
Foundational White Wakandan says, my mind automatically puts a red laser dot on her forehead.
That's good. That's funny.
Antice Yop says, Loomer debate with Dave Smith was insane. I really enjoy watching Dave destroy these clowns. I went to high school with him.
Interesting. That's wild. I still think one of the best debates I've probably ever seen in my lifetime was Dave Smith debating Andrew Wilson on Christian nationalism versus libertarianism. I think it's one of the very few long-form debates Wilson has kept on the crucible. It's almost like a year old now at this point. It's really good. I thought Dave Smith got clapped. Let's go after here.
Antice Yop says, I used to be a fan of Tim, but after he met Bibi, I saw the writing on the wall.
I fell away from him a long time ago. Right here with King
Solomon
Solomons.
says, I liked Tim until the Eliza Blue.
You know, I think that was a little eye-opening, at least to me. Largely just the way that he kind of was treating it, how close Shane Cashman was to the story. And funny enough, nowadays, I like Shane Cashman more than I like Tim Pool, even though it was like the reverse back then, because I thought it was just like super sleazy how Shane was kind of doing the reporting. But I guess it's kind of just like his style. He just like isn't really a reporter. He just like becomes friends with the characters, like kind of how he is with Kanye. Maybe that's his style. But either way, it's more like documentary content than it is like real journalism.
Antice Yop says, Theo Von clip a month ago really woke up some PPL. And I believe it's Trump's favorite podcast.
I don't know if it's Trump's favorite podcast, but I do think it's Barron Trump's favorite podcast, which goes along with what Kyle's saying here.
Kyle Kestner says, I have a hard time believe Trump listens to any podcasts.
And I don't really know if he does either. Like maybe he will occasionally listen to a Joe Rogan episode, say if like Barron or JD Vance pushes it towards him. But I think I've seen multiple reports that a lot of the podcasts that Trump went on the tour with, especially before he was elected, largely was because Barron Trump was the one who was pushing for him to do so, which again, I think is a little bit hopeful. But it's again, there's like a report like a month ago about Barron Trump as like refusing to disclose how he truly feels about politics. He's keeping his cards close to his chest, which is a little odd because it makes you think like, where is Barron, you know, on the kind of conservative track? Where is he at? What does he think? It's awesome.
House Leotardo says, Boomers are not the largest voting bloc anymore. It's time to start taking our seat at the table.
Yeah, very true. And, you know, not only just in the sense of like ideologically, is that the case, right? Where it seems that boomers largely dominate the thought process, but also to go and say like, when you even look at like the job markets, that's a lot of where you see, right? Where it's a lot of old individuals clinging to jobs in which the 40-year-olds like can't move up. They're kind of stuck in this kind of crisis. I don't know if that's what they call the managerial crisis, as much as there is this kind of just stagnant nature. And, you know, in truth be told with that, you know, one thing with my father, actually, you know, went to do a different kind of job. I'm not going to say what it is because I don't want to give any kind of personal identifiable information. But he basically was said, you know, here you go. This is a great kind of, you know, great job. You know, here you go. Here's your schedule. And so he kind of, you know, I think a month or 2 months into it, kind of was thinking, this isn't bad. What's it like, you know, if I want to get promoted? And they're like, well, in order for you to get promoted, what you need to have happen is the person ahead of you, because they have seniority, they'll get first claim to the promotion. But they only do it on a basis of if somebody leaves or resigns. And apparently he was looking at like 11 years until like this guy ahead of him was going to resign. So it was like, why take a job? You know, if you could like, why would you take that job knowing that you're not going to get even a 25-cent raise or anything for 11 straight years? And I think that speaks to, again, a lot of stagnation as well, just in general.
Kyle Kestner says, he said it during the interview about how Barron begged him to gone and how good it would be for the campaign. I'm sure he did his research on who Vaughn was though. He's not stupid, just a bit egotistical.
Yeah, well, plus he's just generally like busy, right? So I don't think anyone that's like this busy as what he is, right, you know, is probably going to, have the time necessarily to spare out and, you know, and kind of watch these things.
Antice Yop says, gotta run to the bank. Y'all take care. I'll be watching in the car. Be well, Ty, again for spreading the word Atlas.
As always, appreciate you guys being here. Thank you very much. And take care, Psyop. I'm sure I will see you on the next one, brother. That's
Spartan
funny.
Cobra 118 says, Baron's watching URN.
That's funny. It'd be cool if he is. Shout out to you, Baron. Appreciate your work. Excited for you to take over as Emperor of America in the coming years. But like I said, I did promise you two other things. One of them being the Laura Loomer, the missile strike. And this is about the impeachment here. So let me go ahead and grab this, actually. So I thought I had the right one. I didn't. This is the right one that I was thinking about. So let me go ahead and put this on screen for you. So this is what I was talking about. And so they're talking about the impeachment here too. So about, again, a 2-minute clip here. And again, kind of responding to the fact that I think Dave Smith was the only one who even said this like publicly, at least, and to my knowledge, talking that Trump should be impeached if we are pulled into war with Iran, which, I mean, I think he was being a little hyperbolic in it. I mean, ultimately, I do think he does believe that, but a little, exaggerated. And people were like, well, why? Impeached over what? Donald Trump hasn't gotten involved in the conflict in Iran yet. And I think that's the argument there, which is like yet, which is, I think most people are now at the point where it is just when, not if. And I do think, as Dan McKnight in Bring the Troops Home U.S., the recent law they got passed in Arizona, right? Which is that if Congress does not vote on going to war, it is unconstitutional. And largely, Dan McKnight has set out to make sure that the National Guards across all the different states in the country, I'm not sure how many he's at now, I think at least 24 or 25 states, so about half, putting legislation forward that if Congress does not put a vote to go to war, you can't take the state's National Guard. And most people don't even realize just the high percentage of when we do mobilize for these kind of foreign, entanglements, if you will, how much of those mobilizations are of the National Guard. And I think Dan McKnight, when I interviewed him, said about 60%, maybe even more than that too, which is a wild number. And I think that also speaks to the general decline we've had in military signups with people. But there's that though. So here's this clip though, because we're going to talk about the impeachment and then the military strikes. And again, there's that one clip from Laura Loomer about the strikes. That's insane. And we'll get to it, but here it is.
This is interesting. It seems like there's been a shift over the past several years among many prominent personalities who were saying that they were conservative or Trump supporting. There's a bit of a distinction, I suppose, but I largely agree with you. I think Soleimani was in Iraq at the time. Minor difference, I suppose. When Trump said,
what's the difference though? I thought they're trying to say that an airstrike is a full-blown declaration of war. So
like, okay, am I the only one that like feels like yes? Okay. Is there someone in the chat that is willing to defend what Laura Loomer just said here? Is there anyone? She's like, let's go back. Okay, I'll go back if anybody missed it. Okay, catch what she says about a missile strike.
When Trump said,
what's the difference though? I thought they're trying to say that an airstrike is a full-blown declaration of war.
If America was struck by a ballistic missile from China, are we going to go, oh, guys, we're not at war, dude. They just struck us with an airstrike. Like, I don't know. Like, it's so retarded, dude. It's so, obviously, when you strike another country, that is a declaration of war. And it's not up to us to decide. You don't get to airstrike another country and say, we're not at war. The other country, when they respond, that decides if there's a war or not. It's not in your hands. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm better off not concerning myself with this, just accepting the fact that we are entirely controlled by absolute retards, and then just going and raising my daughter and hiding in a white town away from everybody. Like, I don't know, but this is insane, right? This is absolutely insane. I'm in disbelief, but here's the rest of it.
So are they saying that we reignited war in Iraq? Are they saying that we reignited war in Syria? They say that Donald Trump is the president of no new wars. So how can you say that Donald Trump is the president of no new wars, which I agree with, and say that the airstrikes on Qasem Soleimani and the airstrikes conducted on al-Baghdadi and ISIS leaders wasn't a new war in the Middle East, but then you're trying to say the airstrikes on possible. And look, the United States hasn't even gotten involved yet, right? The United States hasn't even conducted airstrikes. So they're trying to undermine Donald Trump. Some people like Dave Smith went as far, and he's buddies with Tucker Carlson. Tucker thinks he's amazing. Dave Smith went as far as calling for Donald Trump to be impeached. Impeached over what?
Yeah.
And that's the point. And so this is actually perfectly timed to comment here.
Fine Thighs artist says, I'm confused. Or behind, or both. Have the link. Struck Iran or have Israel struck them with link missiles?
So, I'm going to point you to this video because I already covered it. And I don't want to cover it again. But this is for anybody who wants a stronger explanation of what I've seen. I think it's Valhalla VFT. Let me find it. The U.S. is already attacking Iran. It's this video here. He posted it 2 days ago. And again, it's Valhalla VFT. Again, Valhalla VFT. I'd put it in chat, but I don't have a good keyboard near me. Making the argument that not only are Israel using U.S. munitions, but that we already have attacked them based on evidence that what we have seen from the GBU-57, which is the FOAB, the father of all bombs. And because of that, the only plane capable of dropping said bomb, which is the GBU-57, is the B-2 Spirit bomber, which only the U.S. has. And I think he was explicitly pairing that with reports of, I believe, 2 Iranian top brass members who were confirmed assassinated, but the location they were at was supposedly underground. And because it was underground and the length of which it was underground, it was because they argue that the only bomb that would have been able to do that had to have been the GBU-57. And if it was the GBU-57, it means it would have had to have been a B-2 bomber. And then on top of that, he points to a story in April, I believe at the beginning of April, that B-2 bombers and I believe 6 refuel tankers from the U.S. Air Force were repositioned to Diego Garcia, which is like less than I believe 700, 800, 900 miles south of Iran. And it's It's near the port of Bahrain. It's like a small island. It's basically, if you've ever seen Godzilla -1, it's kind of like one of those tiny islands where it's basically just like an air base with a small port, kind of like, just kind of like a refueling station or a small outpost. But that's what that video is. And he explains it in great detail there. But again, yeah, the U.S. is attacking Iran. Valhalla VFT, if you want to go and look that up. But back to where she was at. I'm going to pull it back a little bit, guys. And we'll start fresh here. But I did want to make sure I answered that and cleared that up to anybody who might have missed me talking about that on a previous stream.
Hasn't even gotten involved yet, right? The United States hasn't even conducted airstrikes. So they're trying to undermine Donald Trump. Some people like Dave Smith went as far, and he's buddies with Tucker Carlson. Tucker thinks he's amazing. Dave Smith went as far as calling for Donald Trump to be impeached. Impeached over what?
Yeah.
Donald Trump hasn't gotten involved in the conflict in Iran. He has always been consistent in saying that we need to make sure that Iran does not have access to a nuclear weapon. He has instructed Tom Homan and Kirsty Noem over at DHS to secure our borders and to work with Kash Patel, our new FBI director, and to work with Dan Bongino to identify or try to locate some of these 2 million gotaways that came in under Biden's administration, open borders. Many of those 2 million individuals are Iranian proxies. They are Iranian proxies and Hamas and Hezbollah who want to hide, in the shadows. They deliberately took steps to not be detected so that they could get into our country and create their own sleeper cells, probably for the sake of being activated by the Ayatollahs, by the Iranian regime, and attacking the United States in another 9/11 style attack.
Well, I guess first I'd have to believe that it wasn't actually orchestrated by an entirely other group. Kind of funny how we always, again, leave all of this stuff out. It's just a little wild at that. But again, that's Laura Loomer there. Again, spewing a bunch of retarded nonsense. And, the one thing that she points out there too, which I'm curious what your guys' thoughts are about this, but this is where I'm at. And I'm going to get to chats here in a second. Sorry guys, I'm doing a poor job. The one thing that really kind of sticks out to me, which is this whole changing of the talking points, which, you can find on X, that somebody had posted it there, and House even posted it in our Discord as well too, which is to say that now they're pointing to the fact that, Trump's always said Iran can't have nukes, right? Trump's always said, 10 what's it called? For 10 years, right? No nukes for Iran. And I'm like, well, that's crazy, because it's like, I could have swore to God we voted the president in to do what the people want, not what he thinks in his head by himself. And that's when I asked, even on the Jar Openers podcast, when we were live, I asked Worrell, I was like, what do you think? Like, I can remember rallies of Trump rallies going, no new wars. I don't remember any Trump rallies that they went, no nukes for Iran, because that just seems, again, let's just be real. That's not what the people wanted. The people's mandate was no new wars. The people's mandate was the belief that Trump would not start any new wars. He would shut down the Ukraine and Russia conflict, and he'd pull the troops out of the Middle East. That was the belief. You know what we haven't gotten? We haven't gotten an end to the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. We're getting more involved in the Middle East. And it looks like we are about to set off a domino events that's going to keep us in forever wars for probably the next 6, 8, 10 years. Complete opposite of what the people wanted him to do. I don't care what Trump said or thinks about Iran. Irrelevant. That's not what people voted you for. People voted for no new wars. And this goes back to the occultism you see from Trump, these Trump, cultists, which is the refusal to criticize Trump for any reason. And I'm sorry, that's not how I view politicians. That's not how I view my government. I view those guys as being voted to get in, to do what we ask them to do, not to get in and act like elitists, not to get in and act like they know better than all the American people. They'll never produce any evidence and expect us to, trust me, bro. It's not what I wanted, not what I voted for, and I'm not going to fucking stand for it. Either change the ship around, dude, or I'm going to start being right there with Dave Smith. Should have been Kamala. Dude, don't play with me, man. I'm so sick of this stuff. And I tell you what, one thing that does not make my blood boil more than anything on planet Earth is seeing little children blown to pieces. I'm telling you, I cannot see any more of it, and I cannot stand the fact that our tax dollars pay for it. It makes me want to quit working and never pay taxes again if that's the sole purpose of them. Because I tell you what, they ain't fixing the potholes in my road. I don't know what the hell they're doing, but I can sure as hell see it, in the Middle East on video. But okay, let's get back to some chats.
Foundational White Wakandan says, Atlas, did you find the Henry Ford audiobook?
I don't believe I did. Let me write that down, actually. Speaking of the audiobooks, I actually got sent one by House, our very own House AI, from Victor Alstansky. It's basically like a tell-all, biography from a guy who was a Mossad operative for 4 years. That's the one I'm going to be looking at too next. But I'm going to write that down now. And again, yeah, House did a good shout out there too. I want to go through all the chats there, but we do have a Discord. I don't think I put the description in the video here. Maybe I should just grab a link for you guys, actually. Maybe the smartest thing to do. And I will post it in the chat here. Oh, Lord. 1 second. Let me just grab this, guys. Apologize. And then I'm going to put the invite link into the chat for anyone who would be interested in joining our Jar Opener Discord. I will tell you the truth. It is not 100% aligned with where I am at. You're going to have butting heads in there. And again, we really only ban for degen stuff. So furry stuff, any kind of sexually related content, anything that really going to get you banned literally anywhere else. That's where we would, bop you out for. But I even try to hold it to a minimum of that even. So I will go ahead and invite people if they would like to join in. I try to be as involved as I possibly can, but that's where you'll get stream announcements, as well as any other kind of, behind the scenes information and just stuff going on as well in our lives. I'll put that in there. And I believe I'll put it in like this. Hopefully that goes through, guys. And hopefully it works for you. And if it's not, just let me know. I will I will let you know. But yeah, and I did see that chat about being banned. I'm not sure how long our Discord will stay up, to be honest. But let's see here. Let me find some chats here. We go back to normal. We'll go back to the video, I mean.
King Solowings says, Jews and Muslims shouldn't say anything about what America should do.
Agreed. Christian Americans should say everything about what America should be doing. I'm of the viewpoint that if you're not Christian, like, I don't even think you should be holding public office. I think that's just like a disgrace to what the entire idea of what our nation is.
Kyle Kestner says, no. The globalists might push blame, but UK is relatively safe in that.
Well, you know, like I said, best of luck for you. We got to fight over here in America, you know. Hopefully in 10 years we'll look over it and see the UK, and hopefully you guys would have pushed back against it.
Fine Thighs Artist says, oh, this is the bunker buster that they'd need link to use the bomber. They're the only ones who know how to use it. I think Fuentes talked about it.
I'm pretty sure he did too. But that video was like very specific about it, and I obviously see it for YouTube, so that's what I've been sending people to give them a better idea of what's going on there with that. But one last thing I'm going to do before I have to sign off. If not, hopefully my daughter's not at the door right now. Let's see if I can find another one here.
Foundational White Wakandan says, people really freak out when you start posting links to George Lincoln Rockwell.
I do think George Rockwell has one of the greatest, if not the greatest, speech that is basically criticizing the modern American conservative movement. I'd have to look at what specific year that was, but obviously he was arguing for the American Nazi Party against the way that the current setup of the American Republican or Conservative Party was, largely arguing on the fact that there is no emotion in conservatives. And he kind of predicted the fact that way back when, that Republicans and conservatives would constantly and would continually lose because they have zero pathos in their argumentation, which is to say they have no emotion. They have nothing that's galvanizing. They have nothing that's motivating. It's all kind of, you know, fiscally economic, like logic and reason, but it didn't have like the kind of like emotion behind it that you really need. So definitely, you know, you look up some George Rockwell speeches. He's got some great ones out there. And a phenomenal clip too, which is hilarious, where he's you know, they're talking to him, I think, after one of his speeches, and they're like, all the members of the board there that you addressed were Jewish, and he's like, all of them? It's like one of the greatest like 5-second clips I've ever seen. It's funny. But okay, let's go rapid fire because I'm running out of time here, guys. Let me go ahead and make sure I pull this off. This was the other thing I wanted to put attention to, because I will probably more than likely definitely be covering it wholeheartedly on my channel, and that is the fact that Nick Fuentes will be debating Dinesh D'Souza. I guess Nick was let aware of it on Super Chats last night during his show, but Dinesh D'Souza right here tweeting, I'm perfectly willing to debate. I've debated the best people in the world on politics and religion. You think I'm scared to debate a wisecracking ignoramus? And it's funny because I feel like I've seen like multiple people call Nick exactly that, right? Wisecracking ignoramus. You know, he's got charisma, man. He's like a phenomenal orator. You know, you can say a lot of things about him, man, but you can't say like, you know, he's not charismatic or he doesn't know what he's talking about, because then you would just be blatantly objectively wrong. But we'll go ahead and watch a little bit of clip here. This is his reaction to it.
Not sure if this even would benefit you, but Dinesh D'Souza agreed to debate you.
I will debate him. I will debate Dinesh D'Souza. Yeah, let's do it. Let's set it up. Run it up. Run it up, dork.
Gas
Let's do it.
$10. It's going to be a great show tonight. It's always a great show, Nick. Thanks for what you do.
We got to
Adam's
schedule
Rolex
that.
sent $20.
So basically he's going to set it up. We'll probably have that here soon, which is awesome. But forgive me. You know, always looking forward and always love seeing Nick debate people, especially on the level of like Dinesh D'Souza, right? He's got a big following. Yeah, 5.1 million followers. That's crazy. That actually, I'd have to check, but that may be the largest person he will have a public debate with. You know, especially if they sit down to do it formally. I know he goes back and forth with Tim in that, but I think Tim only has like maybe 2 million or 3 million on YouTube. I could be wrong about that. Maybe I'm completely wrong. It's somebody bigger than that, but love to see it, right? And he needs to make Dinesh host it on his end so more people tune into it. That would be cool to see. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and do a couple of chats before I go ahead and wrap up, guys. Let's see here.
Kyle Kestner says, "Bro, I saw a video of a kid in Gaza walking the street and the guys asked them what was in his backpack and it's his dismembered brother. I don't know how anyone supports this."
I know. It's very, 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 very disturbing to say the least.
Sven Wessel says, "Ha ha ha, just a lack of slashes in the chat, but this is my crowd."
That's funny. Yeah, no, I get it. Right. I get it. That's funny. But with that though, it looks like it's slowing down. Looks like people are tuning out. I do know there's other creators, bigger guys who probably got streams going on. I do want to say though, thank you very much for everybody for tuning in. Hopefully I can continue to build this and you become a bigger and better creator and maybe even compete with some of the other guys, top brass that are in there like that too. But as always, and like I said at the top, if you haven't seen it, watch my documentary about Project Esther. Let me know how I did. I think I think it's my best creation of anything I've done. And secondly, I may only be doing streams through this week until we get to next week, just because my schedule is so insane. I do know people prefer the videos, because I just like they're a bit more high quality than what a stream can kind of produce. So I will get back to that, when my schedule allows me to, and my parents come back from California visiting my brother, and then I'll have someone who can actually babysit my daughter, and it'd be a lot easier to kind of get through while I'm also working at the same time. So with that, thank you very much. Christ is King, deport Kash Patel, put women back in the kitchen, make God the leader of this country again, and Lord, please help us. We do not need to go to war with Iran. Thanks everybody for being here. Hope you have a good rest of your night, and I'll probably see you tomorrow, and if not, I'll see you on the weekend. And with that, take care.